After completing squares 13 and 14, you will need to join them together using a 3-needle cast off. Make sure that both your squares are slipped back onto 3.5mm needles, i.e. the same size needles that they were knitted on, and that the needles are pointing in the same direction, with the points to the right and the ends of the needles to the left, and hold them with square 13 on top of square 14. Now you'll need a 3rd needle to do the 3-needle cast off, and although it's not always necessary, I choose to use one size larger, because when we cast off, we do sometimes tend to cast off tightly. So by using a larger needle, I can still cast off using my normal tension, but be assured that the cast off and the seam that is created won't be too tight. So with both sets of stitches held together, I put my needle, my 3rd needle, through the 1st stitch on the 1st needle and through the 1st stitch on the 2nd needle at the same time. With the length of yarn that I've left attached, I knit those 2 stitches together and push them very carefully, 1 stitch off each needle. Next I move to the next pair of stitches, putting my needle knitwise through both at the same time. Then again I knit them together, bringing 1 loop through but pushing 1 stitch from each needle off. When I have 2 stitches on my 3rd needle here, I then very carefully lift 1 stitch over the other, like casting off or binding off, and then I simply continue all the way across both sets of stitches in this way, knitting them together, then passing 1 stitch over another to cast them off. Try and keep both sets of stitches on the same position on each needle so that they can slide off quite easily together. And you continue all the way across to the end of the row, repeating this technique until you reach the last set of stitches, at which point I will fasten off to complete the seam. So when you get to the last 2 stitches, knit them together, lift that last stitch off and over, and then fasten off as you normally do when casting off. Bring that knot nice and tightly down onto that last stitch, and then you will find that your 2 squares are joined perfectly together, stitch by stitch, You can't see that seam on the front of the work, you can see it on the back. That will just need a good press. A damp finishing press is best, with some cold water, pinned out, pressed down so that it flattens nicely to complete that strip. You will repeat this same process to join together squares 20 to 21, 27 to 28, and 34 to 35, and 41 to 42.